I am no fool. I understand that we live in a world where film adaptations and television adaptations of video games very often miss the mark. In this world, we can only hope to get close to perfection. Unless you're Arcane, then I guess, yeah, you're perfect. But beside the point, what I'm trying to say is, look, all things considered, I'm pleasantly surprised, and I feel happy about this. Hear me out. Let me tell you why.
You have no idea who you partnered with.
I've been dreaming about this stuff since I was a kid. My brother Sam left one final clue. Oh, God! Guess I'll keep on living.
As you can no doubt tell by the garb and my enthusiasm right now, I'm feeling a certain way before going into this. I want to preface this review in a very, very similar manner to how I prefaced my Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City review. This is Uncharted the movie, based on the pre-existing franchise of the Uncharted games. I want to make it abundantly clear. I am a very big fan of Uncharted. A very big fan. Suffice to say, I'm a very big fan of the franchise for a lot of reasons, of which I might touch on in this review. So, needless to say, I am the definition of biased when it comes to how I approach this film. I tried my hardest to go into this with a few things in mind. I had already started seeing the reviews, and I was trying not to let that sway my opinion. I know video game films don't have the best history in general with working out very well. And most importantly, I did not want to go into this film thinking it was going to innately be bad or that I would innately love it because it's Uncharted. I went into this film with as open of a mind as I could muster. But you must understand that I'm combining that with the fact that I am a very large fan of the franchise. I've played the games ad nauseum. I've seen the games played ad nauseum. I follow the actors who were involved in the games. I know behind the scenes. I know stories. I have seen hundreds of hours worth. Easter eggs, I know them. References, I get them. Like, the whole shebang. This review is going to be a mix of two things. It is going to be a mix of me, as an Uncharted fan, talking about the film, but also trying to judge the film on its own merits. Let's get into adventure. Uncharted came out this year, 2022. As I've already mentioned, and as you've probably already, no doubt, guessed, it is an adaptation of a pre-existing video game franchise that's been around for over a decade. The Uncharted games, adventurer Nathan Drake goes on these big globe-trotting adventures that as the games progress get bigger and grander, and exotic treasures, supernatural elements, gunfights with pirates and with bad guys of all sorts of ethnicities, and cool, crazy action set pieces abound. It's basically like every person, like, you get to play through an action movie, basically. I love them. I think they're fantastic games. This film does something interesting in that it does not follow strictly the plot of any of the games, really. It does not follow the story of Uncharted 1, 2, 3, 4, even Lost Legacy, the spin-off game. It instead takes elements from the Uncharted universe, characters, set pieces, puzzles, locations, treasures, all these different things, and it kind of is a reinterpretation of the source material. Going into that, I kind of had mixed feelings. I wasn't too sure about it, but I actually ended up walking away liking that idea. Before I even saw the movie, I liked the idea of, okay, we are taking concepts that exist in the Uncharted universe and taking them, adding more, taking some stuff away, and reappropriating them for a story that's going to be kind of familiar, kind of new, and it's going to be just a entry-level movie, but at the same time, a movie for the fans. From the top down, directed by Ruben Fleischer, I was unfamiliar with the name myself. However, upon research, a lot of big movies. Most notably and most recently, he did the first Venom, in addition to Zombieland. And I know there's a lot of you fans of Zombieland out there. I'm one of them. And even Gangster Squad, which was that Untouchables remake from a little while back. This guy's been making a lot of films for a while. Some very notable ones, some well-received ones, called classics. So he's got experience just, around that area. So in terms of direction, no major quarrels with that. I think overall it's fairly well directed. Granted, there are some action scenes that suffer not fully from Winter Soldier syndrome, but kind of get a little bit too close, a little bit too shaky, a little bit choppy. But overall, you can follow the action for the most part. When it comes to the big set pieces, including the big one that's touted in the trailers, is the cargo crates hanging from the cargo plane, which, by the way, is straight from one of the games. So gotta love the the homage there and the recreation in real life of that. But whenever these scenes are happening, the action is surprisingly clear. You can see what's going on. It's intense. It's well done overall. No issues from me. Now, where people start taking issue with the film, and this is before the movie was even coming out. This was months and months ago when casting had been announced. People didn't like the casting announcements that had been made. Basically, 2 stars of this film, there's more of course, not to shortchange them, but the 2 main stars are, and these are both household names, so I'm not going to go into their filmography because, moot point, even if you don't watch movies, you know who they are. We have Tom Holland, cast as Nathan Drake, and we have Mark Wahlberg, cast as Victor Goddamn Sullivan. Here's the thing. Out of those 2 casting calls, I like Tom Holland. And the reason why is because I could tell, the way they're setting this movie up, it's this isn't just the one and done Uncharted movie, nothing else coming after this. They're setting it up to be a series. So people forget that in Uncharted 3 and in Uncharted 4, you do have multiple flashbacks to a young Nathan Drake. And so, before we get to who Nathan Drake is as the grown-up, you have kid, you have young, teenage and then adult, young adult version of Nathan Drake. So I think the idea of casting him as someone who's younger, in this case, a well-known name, but someone who is already an action star in terms of film, I liked the casting. I thought he could play a young Nathan Drake and then eventually either grow up into the role or pass off the torch to somebody else. That's how it works. Now, Mark Wahlberg as Victor Sullivan, sure, Mark Wahlberg's played kind of sketchy criminals before, and people that heart of gold but does questionable things. Yeah, I get it. I could kind of see it, but I wasn't crazy about that casting call, and especially because the mustache is missing, the voice doesn't match. Not too huge on that, but I was like, you know what? Let's give it a chance. So casting aside, and then even as the film was starting to was getting ready to come out, I started seeing snippets of reviews. I didn't read anything, but I was seeing that reviews weren't favorable of this film. So I was like, okay, well, let's see how it is. Overall, I liked it. And you know what? I think I'm in the minority, apparently. I haven't looked into people's personal reviews, but Rotten Tomatoes, critics seem to fucking hate this film, like all other video game films. But I think Rotten Tomatoes can, eat my dick on this one. Don't get me wrong, this is not a masterpiece of a film. I'm not even sure if I would call it a fantastic film. But it is, I thought it was good. As someone from a film, just as a film by itself, and as an Uncharted fan, I thought that it was just good, period. I think that Tom Holland embodied Nathan Drake, a young Nathan Drake, pretty well. Again, young Nathan Drake. The one thing I think his character was missing, which is kind of a con, but nothing too major, is that, you have, he embodies kind of just the attitude, the persona, the wise ass, knowledgeable, smart, but at the same time, is kind of he's not perfect. He's tripping around, stumbling, fumbling his way through fights and all this. He's not a perfect hand-to-hand combat expert. He's getting his ass kicked, but he's making it through. The only thing that I think his character is missing in this is charm. Nathan Drake in general, just in addition to all those qualities I just mentioned, he also has a good amount of charm. Now I get it. younger Nathan Drake. So that charm is still, we're kind of getting there. He flirts a little bit with the ladies, but nothing too major. So I get that. Victor Sullivan, I got some issues with him. I'll get to in a minute. Even Chloe, I liked Chloe overall, the gal that got to play Chloe Fraser. Good job. I'm kind of glad they didn't over-sexualize her. I like that they kind of focused more on who she was as a character, but one big flaw with that as well that I'll get to in a minute. Have like Antonio Banderas as the bad guy, and then his like right hand like hired gun, and you can kind of tell who they're trying to like. It steers towards the plot of the fourth game with the pirate ships and whatnot. But again, they change character names, character backstories, family names. They change a lot, so they kind of like, oh, these characters are sort of like these characters, but not really. So there's a lot of that, a lot of taking back and forth, moving around some pieces. So it's kind of cool as you're watching it. If you know the games, you recognize, oh, I know that location, I know that treasure, I know that character, I recognize these story beats. They have little Easter eggs here and there to like the Naughty Dog, to actors in the Uncharted world, to even like little bits like, actual scenes from the video game, like the way you climb, or all these little nods that the fans would understand. And I like that those were all featured. The story I thought was pretty good. I mean, all things considered, I kind of liked how they did this adaptation. It was familiar and yet new. It wasn't anything like great. It wasn't like, oh my god, they were able to like take all these elements, make it into an even cooler story. No. Do not get me wrong. I recommend playing the games, but more than watching the movie. The games are fantastic. They're great. You will not regret it. The movie, good, but pales in comparison. It's not bad. It's just, it's just like, okay, that was a treasure hunting movie. It's like another national treasure or what have you. It's just okay. All the familiar beats of that, the little twists here and there, double cross here and there. You find the clue, solve the puzzle, get the treasure, fight somebody, like stuff like that. The fighting was fun, enjoyable, like all the big action scenes, the fight scenes and whatnot. Nothing to write home about. This isn't like a Mission Impossible Fallout. I'm not going to be like, oh my god, I got to replay this and show friends. Like, I mean, there's some cool set piece moments. Again, the plane probably being the best of all of that. But aside from that, the rest of the action, again, just good, decent, serviceable, nothing too crazy. And I like how they like leave it up, like they by the end of it they set it up to be like, a possible franchise. I hope they make more, just because I'm an Uncharted fan. I love video games. I love, even if they're good or bad, I usually enjoy video game movies at the very least. So I'd be down to see what directions they could take this in as like a new franchise. But of course, I gotta be fair and also come at you with the cons of the movie, because it's not perfect. It's not even fantastic. Victor Sullivan, he's in the games, his character is like, he's not necessarily inherently a good guy. He's a con artist. He's a criminal. He steals for a living. But when it comes to him and Nathan Drake's relationship, even when they first meet, there's still like a kind of like a paternal ideology that way. The movie kind of paints him as like a guy who's just like money, double cross, money, and like kind of more greed, motivationally driven, which doesn't quite track for his character. And it's just like, oh, I'm only here for the gold. Like, of course I was gonna like, use you for this, kid. Like, I just need the treasure. And we eventually have a little bit of a come around by the end of it. But I just kind of thought it was weird how they chose to handle the character. I mean, aside from that, like Mark Wahlberg, like there were lines that made me laugh, and there were like what he did with the character. Like, I liked some of it. I didn't think it was bad. I just was kind of surprised that direction-wise they had him be as greedy as he was. Like, with other people, sure, but with Nathan Drake, typically not. And then with Chloe, like, I liked Chloe. I liked how they didn't over-sexualize her. I liked how she was capable. She had heart. The chemistry between her and Drake, you could tell there was a little bit of something there. What I didn't like was how like they retconned the backstory of her father, which in the games her father is was a good man who, although he ended up disappearing, like inspired her to be a treasure hunter, and was actually also like a treasure hunter himself and historian. And in the movie it's just like, oh no, he was a piece of shit who took some treasure and ran away. Like, I didn't like how they handled that. No really any big spoilers either. It doesn't affect the narrative. I just wanted to say, like, I didn't like how that character's backstory or filled in stuff was handled. The villains, I mean, yeah, like, good. It was a cool take, and kind of had some like harken very heavily to like Rafe and Nadine vibes. Like, it wasn't them. It was different names, different characters, different motivations, more or less, but at the same time, you can tell what they were doing. And again, you notice as I'm doing this review, I can't help but draw, like, I'm just comparing the games to the movies. As a movie itself, like I said, I just thought it was good. It's definitely going to be something I want to watch again in the future, but mainly because I'm biased. But it was fun. It was funny. Was it cheesy in parts? Sure. The effects, I think overall, the effects were great. The practical whenever they could be. Tom Holland put in the work. Like, he was very, you could tell, like, a lot of parkour in this film. He was very physical. I mean, he's a very humble guy, so, like, very proud and honored to be the character, to be able to bring that to life on screen. And the original actor, Nolan North, who voiced Nathan Drake, I mean, he even gave his seal of approval for it. And, you know, I mean, granted, public politics is what it is, but it's got to count for something, right? I think the soundtrack of the film was mostly, like, nothing to write home about. There were some beats that mixed in the Uncharted theme or themes from the games, and those were kind of cool, but the music and soundtrack were just, you know, they just backed the film. They didn't stand out. I wasn't like, oh, listen to that banger. It was just, they were there and they did their job. All the beats, I mean, directing, cinematography, acting overall. Here's the thing, the acting was good. A few lines here and there delivered a little bit weird. It's the script that kind of had a problem. The script wasn't bad, but it was in my opinion, a very simple script that was very simple and to the point. It was, especially towards the beginning, fairly expository, just more or less like, we know the story, but you gotta tell the audience real quick, like give them a lot of backstory, because even showing flashbacks wasn't enough. Like, the movie still felt a need to then communicate even more. And so it's a lot of, like, at the beginning, a lot of expository narrative dumping on the audience in the form of dialogue. So not that it seems clunky, it just is like, okay, here's a bunch of facts, here's a bunch of history. The writing was simple, nothing very emotional. Like, I wasn't endeared. I was here for it. I wasn't emotionally connected to the heart of the film, but I was having a good time. I was like, yeah, here are the characters. I care enough about them. Let's see how this goes. But yeah, overall, I'm very curious to see how my opinion is taken, because so far the court of public opinion before this movie even came out was not great, wasn't well received. But I think the critics are being a little bit kind of weird about, like, this doesn't make any sense. To me, here's how I'm seeing it. I liked the Sonic movie that came out. I think this was at least better than the Sonic movie. That might be a hot take, but, like, Sonic was good, but it really excelled for a few key reasons. I think this, at least, I enjoyed this more than I enjoyed the Sonic movie, in my personal opinion, and yet the Sonic film is rated higher somehow, and people are, like, shitting on this movie. I've seen worse movies. I know what, like, worse movies look like. This wasn't a terrible, and I wouldn't even say this is a bad movie. I was surprised that I enjoyed it. I was worried. I saw the rotten reviews and I was like, oh, this is gonna, I hope it doesn't, but this might suck. And, like, yeah, no, it's not great, but it was good. Like, I thought it was good for a video game adaptation film of this franchise, of this magnitude, to handle it the way that it did. I mean, yeah, granted, the only way we would have gotten perfection is if you had Denis Villeneuve come over and bring his Dune chomps in to work on this, but we're not going to get that with every film, are we? So, all things considered, I'll leave it at this. I'll prove that I'm trying not to be too biased. I'll give you the review that is going to be the review, like the actual score, and then what I wanted to score it. Overall, I would say Uncharted, if you're a fan of borderline swashbuckling, big, like, action adventure, treasure hunting, globe-trotting movies, and you like Tom Holland, Mark Wahlberg, any of those guys, like, you're probably going to like this. At the very least, you're going to like it. It doesn't quite match up to the grandiosity, narratively and otherwise. The scale of the Uncharted games definitely doesn't match up to the scale, but production quality surprisingly is there. The visual effects were good. Trying, like, the old maps, the weathered stuff, the old tombs, like, all pretty well built. Could have been better, but overall, like, you can tell, like, they're sets, but at the same time, it wasn't, like, bad sets, I'm going all over the place here. As a film, I would say Uncharted is worth, what I'm going to give it is a very, very high 3 out of 5. A high 3 out of 5, above average, a good film. I enjoyed it. I would want to see it again. And what I was going to say is I wanted to give it a low 4 out of 5, but being fair, where it would actually rank on the scale of like quality as a film, it's not quite there. It could have used better writing. I think the character portrayals and backstories could have been workshopped a little bit more. That's just a personal preference. It works for the film. It's not bad. It works for the film. Just my personal preference was like, eh. Writing could have been better, like I said, and I don't know. If I had gotten a better sense of scale from the film, I think that would have added to my level of enjoyment as well. But things kind of seemed like closed in, like more confined. Please, by all means, dislike the video, because I'm sure there'll be plenty of those. Comment below what you thought, but that's just my hot take. I don't know if it is a hot take, but I know IGN, they said a 7? Surprisingly, they said a 7. Although they also gave Dune a 7, but I think Dune is better than this by a mile. But I'm really happy about this. I am. I was so worried. I know for years there's been talk of an Uncharted movie. We're seeing more and more video game adaptations in the works. Even a new BioShock show is coming up on Netflix, for Christ's sake. But in a world where it's so easy to fuck that shit up, like Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City, I can admit it was not a good film. I enjoyed parts of it, but overall, not a good film. However, this, I think for an adaptation of its source material, I was pleasantly surprised. I was happy to see it. There are moments that paid homage to the game that had me smiling like an idiot, and I personally love to see it. I love to see something like that get adapted and put on the big screen, and millions of people out there get to enjoy it in some capacity, even if they aren't gamers. Not to mention, if you've been with the channel for a while, you know that over 10 years ago I started this whole channel with my best friend at the time and associate, AJ, otherwise known as MovieMan. Unfortunately, he's no longer with us, but it was nice to bring him with me to see it, knowing that's how we met, and we got to know each other over hundreds of hours of playing the Uncharted games and grew a close bond over that. He never got to see the 4th game pan out, but if he had seen that and been able to come through all this at the other side and go with me to see the movie, I know in my heart, he probably would have agreed, but I it wasn't great, but I think he would have enjoyed it too. And it's just nice to see it. I do not believe they dishonored the name of Uncharted at all. I think they paid a nice little homage to it. Could it have been better? Of course. Of course it could have been better. I'm no idiot. I know it could have been better. But I think with what they had to work with, it was good. I'm glad to see what they did, and I want to see more. And I'm just so happy that it worked out. My opinion. Take it as you will, but that's all the time I have for today. I think this review is already on the longer side, so I'm going to leave it there. Thank you guys and gals so much for watching if you stuck around this long. That was my review of the Uncharted movie, just Uncharted. So what'd you think? Comment below, let me know. And if you're interested, I'll put some links below. I've played a lot of the Uncharted games on my channel. I recently revisited Uncharted 4. I can also post the playlist for Lost Legacy, other stuff that I do like that because I do video game playthroughs as well. But thank you guys and gals so much for watching, and stay tuned for the next episode of whatever I do. Goodbye, travelers.